Welcome everybody, Steve with 10 Books, coming at you with the author of Epic Saints in our Author Spotlight series, Shaun McAfee? McAfee?
Very close, McAfee.
McAfee. What was this, the 10th one? I'm 8 out of 10 on getting the names right, even after I practice it over and over.
I've had a lot of bad ones. There's been like McAfee and McScooter. I don't know. It gets everywhere.
Shaun Mick.
Yeah.
We'll do like a rapper one, Shaun Mack or whatever.
MC.
Well, Shaun, welcome. Thank you for coming on and doing this.
Of course. Thank you.
What made you do Epic Saints? Now, I thought first off, the title's cool. I skimmed through the table of contents. You got a lot of cool little sections about it. Looks like you got other authors involved.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start at the beginning. First of all, actually, I'll start at the end. The publisher really is given the credit. I said Epic Saints and I didn't have a subtitle. I think it was something pretty boring. Great stories from the Catholic Saints. I don't know. When you're making a proposal, you got to make something that works for everybody. But thank goodness that the publisher, Tan, has, a somewhat of a sense of humor and a real interest in this book. And they chose the subtitle Wild, Weird, and Wonderful Stories of God's Heroes. And I love that they put weird in there because a lot of these stories really are weird. And that was really the point of all of this was I wanted to tell, we'll go back to the beginning now. I've been telling saint stories for a long time. I live in Italy and this isn't my job, but I will frequently lead pilgrimages to Padua. We're going to see St. Anthony's Basilica on Saturday. I'm taking some friends who have never been there and don't understand the side chapels and whatnot. Mm-hmm. We go to Venice, we go to Ravenna, we go to Rome, we go to Florence. And everywhere I go, there's something to say about, there's popular saints like Fra Angelico in Florence, but then there's also, Sister Catherine, who you can see her undecomposed body there. And I can tell funny stories about that or just, make it sound interesting. Or St. Christina the Astonishing, which was included in this book. She's another Florentine saint. Mm-hmm. And so I've been telling these stories for a number of years just to my friends, at the spur of the moment. And it seems like I was never one of those people who had an idiom. You ever met somebody who had an idiom for every moment, funny saying? Well, I always had like a saint story for everything. And I decided, you know what? I got a lot of interest in these. I want to put a book together that tells everybody like the very best, like the funniest, the most just like jaw-dropping moments in a saint's life. And of course, we couldn't include all of them. I think there's going to have to be a sequel here. But that's really where we started. It was a product of the writers at epicpew.com. It's a site I founded in 2014. And so we got about 10 authors in here, and tell them to read as many stories as I can. I said, my commitment is to do half the book and to edit it. And so I did. I like to think that I got a lot of great stories, but man, the other authors, they just blew me out of the water with some weird stuff from Saint Benedict. There's stories in here about dragons chasing novices who tried to leave Monte Cassino, and some other just really bizarre ones. And then some, of course, really heartfelt ones too. But that's really where it started in a nutshell.
What's some of those, if you can, without giving away the entire book, what are some of those weird stories that were one of your favorites?
Yeah, so I'll just tell the one of Saint Christina the Astonishing, which, that's her name. That's not something I made up. Like you were saying, there's a lot of titles in here where I was like, hey, there's a Master of Disguise, Blessed Miguel Pro. But then there's Saint Christina the Astonishing. Now, she died after almost I'm not going to say doing nothing with her life, but she was kind of just a basic nun who, died, I think, of some like tuberculosis almost. I'd have to go back through it, but sudden death. And they were burying her body, and they had this bad stench coming from it. But after like 12 hours before they had decided to prepare her body for burial, the Monsignor who was in charge of the funeral, he said, this stinks so bad, we gotta get her in the grave. We can't handle this in the house. But within like 12 or 6 hours or so, her body like reversed all of its decomposition. She had this, because of whatever disease she had, black something all over her skin. I'm not a doctor, I couldn't tell you, but she had just boils and everything. They all reversed. Mm-hmm. And suddenly there was like a fume of flowers coming out from anywhere within the room that she was decomposed in. She began to levitate. and then she came back to life. Astonishing. And this was not like, 1700 years ago when we hear some pretty weird stories of the saints. This was only a few hundred years ago when modern scientific method was being applied by many priests, in these areas. Like these are things that, dozens of people had witnessed and gave testimony to. And so it's truly like when you add it all up, like you can hear stories about like, the saint who defeated Loch Ness or something. And that's literally in the book. But you can hear stories about Saint Christina the Astonishing that were only just a couple hundred years ago and be like, that is truly weird, wild, and wonderful.
And one of the guys I sponsored for confirmation, he picked Christina the Astonishing as a saint.
Oh, wow.
And I don't think he thought that I would know it. Actually, we have a sermon on my other channel on Christina, and I was able to get a little PDF blown up and framed of her. There's an altar piece somewhere. Couldn't remember where it is, but a little 11 by 17.
That's cool.
So you brought up Miguel Pro about disguises. There's that great story of him going up to the cops dressed up as someone else.
Yeah, maybe people know that they know maybe a popular story or two about him, but if nobody's ever heard of Miguel Pro, and I believe he's not a saint, he's a blessed, but we included the blesseds. Anybody who has a servant of God or a canonization awaiting them in the future, we included them in this book. But he didn't just like steal a cop's uniform. He had a closet, a wardrobe full of different costumes. Literally, sometimes he would be like a ladies' man. He would go out in like a zoot suit or something. Other times, he would dress up like a cop. And on this one occasion, he was celebrating Mass. He knew that the cops were about to raid, so he quickly did it. He got out, went back to his house, got dressed in his cop uniform. I don't know whether or not to call it a uniform or a costume, but he came back to the what was a party. They changed up the scene and whatnot and started chewing out the cops who were trying to persecute these Christians. I don't know what for. There is no context there, but he just began to yell at them. I don't know, lazy cops, and just chased them off the scene. Now, I'm not sure like if that could happen in the 21st century where you'd be like, I know what you look like. That's a fake mustache, Starsky and Hutch style. But just really cool story there.
Yeah, he was perfect for that time with that sense of humor and genius to do it.
Yeah, really guts is really.
Oh yeah, massive huevos for that one.
Huevos, yeah.
Can we say that on there?
We did. You did. We did.
What did the other authors that are in the book? How'd you come up with those? Or did they volunteer to do that, or friends of yours?
I don't want to not give credit where credit's due. They found the story, they told it, and what I did in the editing process before it got to the real editors at TAN is I knew the vision I had. And some of these stories were like kind of a little touchy-feely, a little heartfelt. And I wanted to turn them to something kind of just like really straightforward, something you could either read to a kid or read over a campfire or really just have like a coffee table kind of book. And so I wanted to kind of condense it, make it short, make it very vibrant, like Ernest Hemingway style, like that reader style where you can just go from conversation to conversation and kind of have like a back and forth chatter. That's what a lot of these stories are. They involve multiple people. So I edited it down to that. And then, I'll take credit, I guess. I chose a bunch of really funny titles for these. There's one in here. I called it like the Guinness Book of World Records. And there's some arguments on whether or not, like in the Middle East, they do consider it like a world record what Saint Simeon of Stylites did. And I think his younger kind of like Padawan-esque, 100 years later, there was another Saint Simeon Stylites, the younger. But I chose, Saint Sebastian twice murdered. Now, not a lot of people know the story of Saint Sebastian, or there's a funny one of Saint Lawrence in here where he gets kind of cooked on the grill. And he says, I'm done on this side. So I chose a pretty funny one for that.
Flip me over, I'm done on this side.
Yeah. And that's a story that has survived. Like, it's not just like a 20th century story. Like, you go to Butler's Lives of the Saints, and you'll pull out stuff from, the Roman martyrology where that's a quote. Mm-hmm. So that there's some good historical evidence with what we included here. We did just go to like Wikipedia and say, hey, what can we find that's funny? We actually went to the scholars on this.
That's one of the best part I thought of the book. I mean, the table of contents, what you title these chapters, it's not boring. It makes you want to pull to those pages.
Yeah, like we said, coffee table. So I mean, imagine you're reading like, Mad Magazine back in the day, and you want to find the funny story that sticks out. So there's like Against All Odds, Stephen Harding. That's a story. Really, nobody's probably ever heard of Stephen Harding, but he was really the predecessor to a very important saint, Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. Everybody's heard of him. Mm-hmm. So I didn't drop that name, Bernard of Clairvaux, until the very last like sentence in that one. And you have to kind of read to understand why. Like that's an important story too. It's a fun one.
And you got Phil Nuri in there. He could have a book by himself on, funny or crazy or wild or weird stories.
Yeah, the advice for newlyweds one. In case somebody's never heard of this, he was approached one time. What's a good prayer for a newlywed? Somebody was coming to him like in an honest question. It was like their first wedding or something. He said, "What's a good prayer to share with a newlywed couple?" And he said, "A prayer for peace." Short story.
And from what I've heard, he used to carry around a joke book just so he could come up with stuff like that.
Yeah, he would have cardinals from the Curia, or what was like the Roman dicastery back then, or even the Pope back then. He would come to his office there in Rome, and he would have a joke book, and he would read that to him, and people would be, back then, I don't know if you know, but the Roman court used to have a jester until Pius V kicked him out. In the 1550s, and so he was right there within that time period. So he was kind of trying to reform the spirit, reform the humor with Rome, and really show everybody, hey, look, I know these are sad times. Battle of Lepanto. We just got done with the crippling popes and cardinals who have really betrayed the church. And we just had the Council of Trent. Well, he was one of the only ones in Rome that was willing to, shave off half his beard to make people laugh and see really the joy of the gospel and humility.
Yes, what was Teresa of Avila warned about sourpuss saints?
Oh, yeah. I got a feeling I'm one of those sometimes. I try not to be. I try to pick this one up and realize the saints had a sense of humor too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got to laugh. If you can't laugh, well, what's the old phrase? You can't laugh, you cry. So
probably do a lot of crying.
Find some joy out of something. You were talking about maybe a volume 2 of this. What do you have enough already for that, or?
Probably not enough. I've probably got enough for maybe, I don't know, at least a third of it. I've been reading a lot of, and I don't think I included a single story from, which was a huge mistake, but I didn't include a lot of Saint Dominic. There was a lot of interesting moments in his life, and I'm a lay Dominican, so I've been reading, Augusta Drain's, 1700s biography on him, and been collecting on the Dominican tradition for a while now. And there's some really interesting moments in the history of the church. And even somebody like, I don't think he's in here, but Peter of Verona, you always see him. He's a very recognizable icon where, you see a saint with a sword sticking out of his head. I think there's one other from like the 400s, and I couldn't tell you who. But he's that saint. He's got a sword sticking out of his head, and he stood up and kind of said something kind of funny. I'm not going to say it because I would ruin the next book. And forgave his murderer in the same moment. And then there's, of course, Sajjana Viene. I didn't include any of his work on here, and I wouldn't say that Sajjana Viene was a humorist by any means, but he had a really interesting way of bringing out people's joy and bringing out people's, he was a seer. He was he was the Padre Pio of, the post-French Revolution era. And so he had nearly every single spiritual gift. He had the gift of prophecy, he had the gift of foresight, he had the gift of healing, bilocated. And all of these created some, imagine bilocating in confessionals that were people would basically camp out overnight like we do for iPhones now. Well, he bilocated basically to save time. I'm kind of giving away some of the stories here, but there's some really interesting ones where you could read it in, what is his biographer's name? You could read it in his biographer's, words, and you'd be like, wow, that's amazing. But there's a funny element to it.
Yeah, there's a story of Pius X when you mentioned that bilocating, about him hearing a confession of a priest, and all of a sudden the priest is running because he's late. I think he's late to get to mass or something. And there's Pius standing on top of the steps smoking a cigarette going, "What's your rush?"
Oh my goodness. Yeah, well, I'll share one from the life of Saint John Vianney. It's Trochu. Trochu wrote the big, huge volume on his life. There was this is kind of sad. I don't know why I'm laughing, but it's kind of humorous, I suppose, because it's kind of like, just the vengeance of God. So this young man, he kind of cuts in line in one of these confession situations where there's just a huge line, and he goes and he says, Father Viene, I've got to get to the front of the line. I have no time. I'm sick. And the doctor says I'm going to die within a day here, and I just need to get to confession. And he wasn't sick, wasn't going to die within a day, didn't need to get to confession as bad as he thought he did, wasn't willing to wait in line. And he said, okay, I'll hear your confession. Heard his confession, gave him absolution, gave him a penance, and said, you're going to die before you make it home. And that man died after getting out of the confessional, just dropped dead. And that's just crazy. That goes along with the wild, weird, and wonderful stories of God's heroes. And it just shows, I don't know, there's an element that I don't really need to explain there. You don't test God. You don't test the saints.
You mentioned Peter Verona. I have a 16 by 20 of him up on the wall because of his, I don't know, are you familiar with Sacramento, the Peter Martyr Palm?
Go ahead.
Well, he was the first Dominican martyr, I think it was, and he was the
yes, yeah.
Yep. So he controlled the weather. So the Peter Martyr Palm has a prayer. I have the prayer. I had to find it for years to do this. I got a bunch of them over in the corner. But it protects homes from diabolical possession of the home or influence of the home and storms. So his feast day, I get him blessed. 12 o'clock noon mass. Got it blessed by 12:40. Black as anything, sky's coming in right afterwards. Tornado warning coming in. Handed out to the people that were asking for it. The next day I hear people say, wow, it sounded like that storm went around us. Tornado here, tornado here. We had a drizzle.
Oh my gosh.
Charlotte, they give out the palm ever since then. They started doing the palm blessing too. There was a hurricane, wow. I think it was last year. It was supposed to make a beeline for Charlotte. The eye was supposed to come over. People here were preparing for the worst. A friend of mine said, we got a drizzle. It made our right-hand turn in the last minute. Barely got any rain here. No big deal. So I'm in Denver, I've given away the palm. People have told me, because they had bad hail there. We're talking hail. Take out roofs and cars. The cars look like they went to the golf driving range and just gotten beaten up. But everybody that has that palm has never had a roof redone, and everyone else in their neighborhood has.
Oh my goodness! I've never heard of that. I didn't know he was tied to atmospheric items like that. That's interesting. Yeah, really cool.
There was a story about there was a heretic I think it was somebody he was debating, and he said something about if you could move the clouds or something would happen that they would do X, and he just moved and the sky's open.
That's neat. Now that would make a really good book, like 40 traditions of the Catholic Church you've never heard of but should, or something like that. Would be funny. I guess I need to get writing on a proposal.
There you go. Well, Dom Guéranger writes about it, so that's an easy find for you.
Yeah, get some research done. Cool.
Yes. Well, Shaun, appreciate your time on this. We'll have the link underneath in the show notes for people to get the book. When I first started at TAN, this was the first book someone told me, and I looked at it going, I haven't seen it yet, but that's a great title, and I'm interested in opening it up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, check it out. Show notes section. Shaun, appreciate. What's your website again?
Oh, you can go to epicpew.com. I write for the National Catholic Register, and you can go to ShaunMcAfee.com if you want to be pretty bored.
Appreciate your time, bud.
Thank you.